Week 9 of the fantasy football season. Here's quarterback sits every matchup this week. Thursday night, Houston Texans at the New York Jets. CJ Stroud I have as a start. I know he's out. Nico Collins at least one more week. Stephon Diggs. It's not a great matchup at the New York Jets, but this Jet defense definitely has been leaky and giving up points over the last few weeks. So even with two top weapons out of the lineup, CJ Stroud, it seems like, finds a way most weeks than not to go out there, put passing yards on the board. I know the last couple weeks the numbers are down. He's failed to reach 15 fantasy points in back-to-back weeks is CJ Stroud. But this week, Thursday night, where the game's usually high-scoring, and like I said, this Jet defense hasn't really stopped anyone. He's a start. Aaron Rodgers is a borderline option. This Texan defense really hasn't been that great over the last couple weeks. And Aaron Rodgers has good weapons. Devontae Adams, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall out of the backfield, but they just haven't put a complete game together the last few weeks. And we know the Jets are 2-6 on the year, with the season pretty much on the brink. So Aaron Rodgers, we'll see this week if he can bounce back, has a good game. But with 15 games on the slate, at best he's a borderline option. Dallas Cowboys at the Falcons. Dak Prescott's definitely struggled the last 2 weeks, and this Cowboy team this season's fallen apart pretty quickly as well, getting destroyed by the Lions in week 6, 47-9. And then last week, they were down early in that one, down 27-10 at one point before the offense woke up and started making plays. So it was good to see Dak and CeeDee Lamb hit on some big plays. But the thing is, it was garbage time for the most part at that part of the game where they made a false comeback was Dallas. And this week, I know it's a better matchup at Atlanta, but at best, I think Dak Prescott is a back-end option. Kirk Cousins a start. Last week, a big game for Cousins. His rapport is there with Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Kyle Pitts, and Bijan Robinson's running well out of the backfield. To Kirk Cousins, we know he's always been a good home quarterback. And last week on the road, he went out there and put up a big performance, over 30 fantasy points. So this week versus a Dallas defense that's banged up and can't stop anyone, he's a start. Denver Broncos at the Baltimore Ravens. Bo Nix, he's a sit. I know Bo Nix has definitely improved over the last few weeks, but it's been some better matchups as well versus at the Saints. And then last week, an easy one versus the Carolina Panthers. But Bo Nix, we know he's got mobility. He can run the football. But we know in the passing game, there's not much going on. It's Cortland Sutton, Adam Trautman at tight end, Valet, and also Troy Franklin. But those guys have been inconsistent and not great track records besides Cortland Sutton. So this week in the matchup of Baltimore, I know their defense hasn't played good football, but still Bo Nix will be tough to trust. Lamar, he's a start each and every week. I know this is a tough matchup versus one of the best defenses in all pro football, the Denver Broncos. But I think this week Lamar Jackson still goes out there, does his thing. Tough loss last week, and he's a matchup-proof quarterback with his running ability and just the way he makes plays and put points on the board. Vegas Raiders at the Bengals. Gardner Minshew, he just hasn't done anything all season long, and pretty much it's not 100% all his fault. There's not a lot of good weapons, and the run game has been non-existent for this Vegas Raider team. So Gardner Minshew with 15 games this week, there's no way even in 2 quarterback leagues he's going to be a start. Joe Burrow a start. We'll see if T. Higgins returns in this game. But Joe Burrow, it's been a great season for him in terms of fantasy football. I know this Bengal team, it's been a bad year overall. They tried getting back to 500, but now falling to 3-5. This week, they know it's a must-win game. And Joe Burrow, I think, is going to go out there, and him and Jamar Chase have a big one. I'm going Patriots at the Tennessee Titans. Jacoby Brissett, I believe, is going to be the starter. Drake May in concussion protocol. And we've seen for the most part this season, it's tough for a play to be cleared within a week before the next game. So I say Jacoby Brissett starts this game. We haven't seen much all season long. He's pretty much been a game manager and not putting points on the board. And I've said this in other videos. This Patriot team is built on running the football and playing defense. Even though last week, you got to give credit to Brissett. He drove down with 2 minutes left about in that ball game, and they got the game-winning touchdown and beat the New York Jets. This one in Tennessee, where their defense, for the most part, besides the last 2 weeks versus high-powered offenses, it's been a decent unit. Mason Rudolph, Will Levis, whoever starts this game, isn't going to have fantasy option. Rudolph's definitely looked like the better quarterback between the two. But like I said, 15 games this week. This offense really doesn't have much going besides Tony Pollard and Calvin Ridley at times. And I know this Patriot defense isn't all that great, but both these quarterbacks are sits this week. New Orleans Saints at the Carolina Panthers. We'll see if Derek Carr returns in this ball game. But even if he does, I don't believe he's a top option. And this same team, they're depleted with injuries as well. Some injuries on the O-line. Shaheed out for the season. Chris Olave just got back last week. He looked good, at least over 100 yards receiving. But besides that, and Alvin Kamara, this offense is limited And even in a good matchup at the Carolina Panthers, it would be tough to trust Derek Carr coming off injury and putting right back in your starting lineup. And if Rattler's the starter, he's not going to do much, I believe, for this team. He had a couple chances the last few weeks, and how could you really trust him? Bryce Young, last week, he didn't do anything, getting another opportunity with Andy Dalton out with the thumb injury. He threw a couple interceptions, and a garbage time touchdown was Bryce Young, but he's not going to be someone you trust. He's a sit. Andy Dalton, same thing as well. He'll have a couple pop games here and there, but he's not someone fantasy owners are going to put in the starting lineup. Miami Dolphins at the Buffalo Bills. Tua returned last week, and he looked decent at times, but obviously not 100%. And he's got to get back into the playbook as Tua, and he's always got to be cautious, obviously, not taking a big hit and just getting rid of that football quick. So this week, a matchup at Buffalo where they're playing great football. Their defense is holding good offenses down for the most part. And this week, at best, I think Tua is a borderline option, because think about it, he's not obviously going to get rushing yards as Tua. This is a tougher matchup, and he's also not 100%. I don't think so as well. Josh Allen, he's a start each and every week. And now with Amari Cooper in the lineup, this offense is even more dynamic and easier for Allen to put up fantasy points. So last week, he did throw his first interception of the season, but Allen, he was a gunslinger for many years, but this year, being smarter with his throws and not forcing it. And I think that Stephon Diggs helped this team as a whole, where Allen at times thought he had to force the football to Stephon Diggs. Now he's spreading it out, and he's making plays and not turning the football over. So like I said, number one quarterback off the board in fantasy drafts, and a great matchup versus the Dolphins. This week, Los Angeles Chargers at the Cleveland Browns. Justin Herbert is sit for me. I know Herbert had a nice game last week. Him and Ladd McConkey hooked up on some big plays where McConkey went over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. But this week, Herbert's a sit. I know this Cleveland Brown defense hasn't been good all season long, but they just don't travel well for the most part, is this Los Angeles Charger offense. And with 15 games on the slate, I think Herbert in 2 quarterback leagues is a decent number 2 quarterback. But besides Ladd McConkey in the passing game, there's not much going on there. Jameis Winston, a borderline option. He's one of the better gunslingers in all pro football, is Jameis Winston. And this offense looks good with him on the center. He could get the football out. He takes those deep ball chances, and he knows this is an opportunity as Jameis. If he has a good year here this year, next season, he could go out there back in the free agent market and get possibly a starting job. So last week, 334 yards for famous Jameis, 3 touchdowns in that ball game, and he's got some decent weapons. Cedric Tillman, David Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore, all guys capable going out there and putting up decent performances. So this week, I know it's a tougher matchup with the Chargers coming to town, but like I said, Jameis Winston, he's that quarterback that goes out there and slings it, and some weeks he'll have bad weeks, and then some weeks he'll put up monster performances. But like I said, I think Winston goes out there and it's a good game. Commanders at the Giants. Jaden Daniels, what a season it's been for him in his rookie season. We know he's not 100% with the rib injury, but he gutted it out last week, and he put on a monster performance still, including that Hail Mary touchdown, obviously, which was luck to win the ball game. So this week, a great matchup at the New York Giants, where they can't stop anyone, and we just saw Russell Wilson go out there and carve this defense up. So Jaden Daniels, he's a top 2-3 option weekly. And this week, I think he goes out there and has a big game. Daniel Jones is a sit. He just can't find the end zone, is Daniel Jones. And he's been a bust for this New York Giant team. I know it's not 100% his fault, but Daniel Jones, he's not finding the end zone. He's had bad turnovers over the last couple seasons. And I think this New York Giant team's going to move on from him after the year. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Eagles. Trevor Lawrence, he's had some decent games here and there this season. But this week, a tougher matchup going to Philly. And now with Christian Kirk out for the season and Brian Thomas banged up, might not play in this ball game. It's tough to trust Trevor Lawrence in this one. And like I said, he's been too inconsistent. Jalen Hurts, he's a start each and every week. Top 3-4 quarterback off the board in fantasy drafts. It was for Jalen Hurts this season. And last week, a monster performance with 4 total touchdowns for Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, he's been running the football a little bit more. Now with A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith back in the lineup the last 3 weeks, obviously the numbers have gone up and this offense has opened up. So he's a must-start weekly. Chicago Bears at the Arizona Cardinals. Caleb Williams, to me, is a borderline option. A lot of people thought last week I ranked him low. It's the number 17 quarterback. But Caleb Williams, he's been inconsistent all season long besides 2 big games. So this week, I know it's a better matchup at the Arizona Cardinals. But like I said, Caleb Williams has been way too inconsistent. Him and DJ Moore really haven't been hitting week in and week out. And Keenan Allen hasn't done much. Roma Dunze, besides that one big game at the Colts early in the year, hasn't done anything. And Cole Kmet, one good week, one bad week. So this running game, for the most part, has been the more consistent thing in this Bear offense. So this week, even in a good matchup on paper, he's a borderline option. Kyler Murray, he's a start each and every week. And the last couple weeks, this offense has definitely picked things up. I know Kyler Murray, one of the more premier running quarterbacks in all of fantasy football. But last week, a lot of pocket passing, and it's led his team back to win the ball game, where we saw Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride go over 100 yards each in that ball game. So this week, even in a tougher matchup versus a good bad defense, he's a start. Los Angeles Rams, Seattle Seahawks, Matthew Stafford, he's a start now. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua back in the lineup, and Kyron Williams, who's been a great running back all season long. This is a dynamic offense once again. We saw they went on a big run last year to make the playoffs with this Ram team. And this week here, if they win this ball game, they go to 4-4, and they're right back in the thick of things. So, like I said, Matthew Stafford's a gunslinger. He's got two great wide receivers back in the lineup. And this Seattle Seahawks secondary hasn't stopped anyone. So this week, Stafford's back in for fantasy owners. Geno Smith is sit. We'll see if Metcalf plays in this game. I believe he will. Where last week he was close to suiting up, but didn't. But Geno Smith, the last couple weeks, for the most part, the numbers have dropped off. And besides DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, they've been inconsistent for the Seattle team. I know this Ram defense isn't all that great, but like I said, it's just tough to trust Geno week in and week out. Detroit Lions at the Green Bay Packers, Jared Goff's the start. Last week he didn't have to do much as Jared Goff, but he still threw for 3 touchdowns, even though he had under 100 yards thrown in that game, where special teams in the running game carried Detroit to the monster performance. So Jared Goff's playing great football, one of the more accurate quarterbacks we've seen in many seasons. And with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Montgomery Gibbs out of the backfield, and Sam Laporta starting to look a little bit healthier, Jared Goff's got it going. I know it's a tougher matchup at the Packers, but we just saw Jacksonville put up 27 points versus defense. So Goff, I would have actually some confidence in starting him. Jordan Love is start. He's day-to-day with the groin. It could have been much worse. And Matt LaFleur thought originally it was going to be worse for Jordan Love, but it looks like he might play in this ball game day-to-day with the groin. So if he's in, he's a start. This is a potential shootout at Lambeau Field. And Malik Willis, if he's starting in this game, some flashes from Willis. But this week he would be a sit with 15 games on the slate. Indianapolis Colts at the Vikings. Joe Flacco is sit. This is a good Viking defense. I know last week they got torched by the Los Angeles Rams, but this Colt offense, it's just been a problem all season long when Richardson's in there. I know Joe Flacco's a gunslinger and he puts up points, but this is a tough spot on Sunday Night Football for Flacco. Decent receivers, Josh Downs, obviously Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce. But like I said, this Viking defense, one of the best units in the league. Going to bring a lot of heat, I believe. And we know Flacco's not mobile, but he's definitely got a good arm, and he makes this offense better because it's Sam Darnold to start. It's been a good year for Sam Darnold, no doubt about it. Last week at Los Angeles, I thought he played a good game, 20 fantasy points in that one for Sam Darnold. And this week versus a Colt defense that can't stop anyone on Sunday night in a home game, he's a start. And the final game of the week, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Kansas City Chiefs. Baker Mayfield, I know he's without Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, who's out for the season. But last week, with a bunch of young guys, Cade Otton and Sterling Shepard in the lineup, he still went out there and had a decent ball game, I thought, was Baker Mayfield. So this week, a tough matchup, no doubt about it. One of the best defenses in the league at the Kansas City Chiefs. But Baker Mayfield, he's another quarterback that's a gunslinger. He fits this offense like a glove. And even with his top 2 wideouts out, I believe he could go out there and put up top 12, top 15 numbers at the quarterback position. Patrick Mahomes last week, one of his best games of the season in fantasy football. And this week, a great matchup versus Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming to town, where they can't stop anyone, is Tampa Bay. All teams go out there, put big points and huge numbers on the board. And this week, Patrick Mahomes, with him and Travis Kelce back on the same page, and Hopkins picking up the playbook even more, you would think this week. He's a quarterback you start. Quarterback starts, sits every matchup for week 9 of the fantasy football season.